Within the last few minutes, Columbia University directing NYPD onto their campus to remove protesters who refuse to leave the school's library. Now you can see police officers, some of them even in riot gear, removing some of those students in zip ties, and right outside clashes between police and protesters turned violent, with those heavy metal barriers being pushed into the air. And this is what the scene looked like inside a Butler library. A little bit earlier, students protesting in a standoff with school public safety officers. The school saying two of those officers were hurt. Outside, group of students gathered earlier attempting to force their way into the library. Remember, the school was the site of those encampments last year protesting Israel's war in Gaza, now a major target of President Trump over allegations of anti-Semitism. I've counted 78 people ushered out by the NYPD of the library. You can see behind, just ahead of finals week. They're largely walked out in twos, flanked by police, their hands behind their back tied with zip ties. One protester had just shouted "Free Palestine" as they have been ushered out by the police. This comes after police. The demonstrations flooded into the school's library earlier this afternoon. Columbia University posting a series of updates and statements saying that for the protesters who refuse to provide identification and disperse, they could face possible arrest. Well, several hours later, they called in the NYPD, and that is what you see behind me. There are barricades, been going in and out of the university library, officials say have been occupied by protesters. It's not just by protesters, it's not just tensions spilling over inside of the campus, but also outside, maybe about 50 yards or so from where I'm standing. You might even be able to make out the demonstration still underway right now. But earlier, there was some serious physical clashes between pro-Palestine protesters and police. Police trying to use these barricades, you'll see behind me, to push people back, and then the protesters, then pushing back and forth there earlier today, was campus police, security officers who have been trying to hold this building on lockdown, and the university said that 2 campus officers were injured. They say some pro-Palestinian protesters had tried to force their way into the library. All comes the Trump administration's crackdown on what they call harassment of Jewish American students, even cutting hundreds students of millions of dollars of funding to federal funding to Columbia University trying to stem pro-Palestinian protests. Scotty, and so the protests that are rather right now, the ones that we could hear chanting in the background, is it still a very sizable group? Or does it seem like things are starting to disperse? It is a sizable group outside of campus.